Thanks for tuning in to the Fibrenews podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Rae, and in this episode, I'm joined by Sean Royce, the CEO of Quickline. I'm absolutely buzzing for this episode because I haven't had a chance yet to speak to any C-level players who are heavily involved in the BDUK Project Gigabit scheme. And these guys are not only heavily involved, they're also very much dominating. They've been awarded 4 contracts, which totals to £300 million worth of subsidies to go and build a ton of rural addresses. In this episode, we talk about Sean's journey. He has extensive experience as a CEO within connectivity. We talk about the difficulties of building out to rural locations. We talk about their journey to get their investment to go and build the dream that they're achieving. We talk about the different products they're managing and everything else in between. And this is the first time I got to go on site and record a podcast, and the quality is still there, which I'm really happy about. So hopefully we can do more of that in the new year. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. But before we get into the episode, I just want to talk to you about the Fibrenews directory. I've talked about it before in the previous episodes. We launched it on the 1st of December. It's a centralized platform where you can find any wholesaler, supplier, or distie to do with the ISP and B2B reseller MSP world. So whether you want to find a new hosted voice supplier, wholesale connectivity, a new hardware vendor, a new billing vendor, software development house who's in our industry, anything you can think of, we've added into this listing or this directory portal. We're constantly adding at the moment. I think there's about 80 vendors, and every day we're adding new. So first of all, if you're not on there and you are a wholesaler to our industry, just drop us a line, jray@fibrenews.co.uk, and I'll get you added. Secondly, we do have a very affordable paid version of our listing, so everyone gets added on for free. We do want anyone in the industry to be able to find those suppliers and wholesalers. But if you want to be verified, and you want to be on the homepage, and you want to get access to analytics of who's viewing, and you want to get access to customize your page, add lots of nice imagery, and lastly, if you want to add a person that they can contact and message on the platform, then just reach out. It's a monthly fee and it's very, very low. I promise you that. Thank you for listening to that. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I was buzzing to go to site to sit with Sean. It's the first time we've done an on-site podcast as well, and I really, really enjoyed it. So thank you again for tuning in.
It's a good place for us to start. Is you're a CEO with an extensive background. I think within the altnet industry, we have kind of 2 types of CEOs. One that's heavily involved in the tech and the product and have done 30 years within connectivity, and the others where the investors might have put them in the company to see the ship forward and make sure nothing goes wrong. And I think you sit on the side of being a connectivity veteran. So if you can give our audience a brief overview of your background and how you got to Quickline. You don't have to spend 20 minutes on it, but just an overview would be grand.
A veteran.
Veteran is right.
I like that phrase, but you're right. Yeah, I started in telco in 1989.
There we go.
I said somebody.
Before I was born.
I said thanks for that, Johnny. I said to somebody, that's 5 decades of it, 80s, 90s, zeros, noughties, does it? Yeah. Which sounds awful, but that's true. Yeah. But I started as a graduate trainee in what was then Kingston Communications, which was the other incumbent operator in the UK behind BT. So that very special part of East Yorkshire, Hull and East Yorkshire, where BT don't exist. So I started there. It was all telephony then, as you know. Strowger equipment, old, just an old way of running a copper network. Yeah. We digitised that in 1990, actually very quickly after that. The first operator in the UK to have itemised billing and all the rest of it. We got rid of party lines and all that sort of thing. Yeah. The older listeners will not know what I'm talking about. So we did that. We floated the business it was council owned. Yeah. So it was a council-owned department.
How did this all come about?
I know.
You're talking about it from the original state then. So why? Yeah. How did this get created, and why did the...
Very, very briefly, a very potted history, Johnny. Way back when, back in the early 90s, 1900s, sorry, each council owned their own telephone department. One by one, it was just too capital intensive, it was too difficult to run, and they became the General Post Office, and you'll see those sometimes on the streets, on some of the street furniture these days, even now. And then that became BT, and that became liberalised in 1984, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Hull City Council clung on to theirs. That never went into the post office, and I think there was one in Plymouth as well, and they eventually went in, or Portsmouth, I can't remember which.
Because it was profitable to the council?
I think that because they wanted to earn that public service. And then it was still capital intensive, so they created a separate business that was 100% owned by the county, by Hull City Council, to avoid capital spending constraints that the public sector had.
Yeah.
And then that eventually, as I say, in 1999, they spun that off at the height of the dot-com bubble. So they did that at exactly the right time.
Yeah.
We did that in 1999. Very quickly on the dot-com bubble became a FTSE 100 company, believe it or not, and very quickly then dipped out of FTSE 100 as well. So it was worth more than Rolls-Royce and all sorts of things at that time. Because the business, even when I joined then, was we can't live on Hull alone. We've got to create a national something else, and we did satellite businesses. We looked at and created a national network, which we did with Yorkshire Electricity, which we bought out, became Torch Telecom, and eventually we sold that business. I helped sold that business actually to Greg at City Fibre, yeah, which was 23 metropolitan area networks across the UK and what was then tier 2 cities, Milton Keynes.
Networks being cities that you've got your own
access networks into 23 cities across the UK, strung together with a figure 8 backbone that we co-built with Colts back in the day, and that was the growth engine of the company. People think Kingston, correct, and what is now KCOM was just a local regional player.
Absolutely, yeah.
3/4 of that business was a national business. It was only 1/4 of it that was based in Hull. From when you looked at the revenue, for example, but the profitability was all in Hull.
Was it consumer, that network, or was it business?
No, it was B2B was the national network.
Yeah.
So that was great fun. We did all sorts of things. We also, back in the late, when we floated as well, we had aspirations of being a content provider. So think about, we created the first commercially deployed interactive TV services and the commercially available video on demand here in Hull. And we did that with people like Blockbuster, which I'll come back to, worked with the BBC, even Sky came up here, Rupert Murdoch came up here to have a look at it. We just didn't have, in the end, enough capital or enough brand strength to roll that out nationally, which was the ambition.
When was this?
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Before anybody had launched
What we were doing with video on demand and Blockbuster, unfortunately, Blockbuster chose to send DVDs in jiffy bags instead of doing what they should have done. Everyone knows what happened to Blockbuster. So they picked the wrong diversification strategy. Yeah. We didn't have the scale. What that business now is, think about Prime TV, think about Netflix.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Although
you missed out on an incredible opportunity here.
Well, it needed a lot of money.
Of course,
So that was great fun. But I said to people as well, the BBC came here. We did lots of work with them, putting public services on and putting content on TV, interactive TV. They're based their northern office here, still here in Queen's Gardens in Hull. And here you are, Johnny. A little fact, if you don't remember anything today. The red button that is so familiar and ubiquitously available now across the whole of the UK was invented here in Hull on that ADSL broadband network.
What?
Yeah. So they were trialing that interactive,
of course, yeah.
interactivity on the red button here on the network here in Hull because we had the capacity and the capability to do it.
Very interesting.
There you go. But that was way back when. I guess my proudest moment there, though, Johnny, which is relevant today, is we decided to build a full fibre network here in Hull. We had 250,000 premises, and around about 2008, BT were building a FTTC network across the UK. It was cheaper, but I always had a vision, which my board supported, were to skip that. FTTC was a finite technology. It wasn't the answer. We had an opportunity to leapfrog here in Hull and East Yorkshire. So what we created was a full fibre network. We built that. One of the reasons we sold the network to Greg at City Fibre, the national, was to raise the capital to build the fibre network here, to secure the regional business.
Right.
And in 2019, we completed that build to 250,000 premises can access full fibre here. Still the only ubiquitously available full fibre network in a city.
Yeah.
Even now, 5 years later, and that fibre capability was what we created, which is in the end what drove Macquarie to buy the business back in the back end of 2009.
Yeah. Okay, so this is KCOM that we're talking about.
Yeah, sorry, KCOM. That was KCOM. Yeah. So that was that, and then I thought, well, I've done all that.
Yeah.
What's next? And so I stayed there a couple of years after Macquarie, and then got an approach to think about can you put right the digital divide in the north of England? Can we make a difference to those rural communities in the north who have woeful and inadequate broadband? I thought, well, that's up my street. That sounds like a challenge, and actually something morally that feels the right thing to do. So Northleaf Capital Partners were just buying a wireless internet business as a step up to creating a hybrid network, but had no fibre capability and wanted to scale it up, as many investors were at the time in infrastructure. Yeah. So I took that on and became chief executive here at Quickline Communications, which was an established wireless business. It was a very small one, but an established wireless business. And the ambition was to grow that across Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, upgrade the wireless technology, blend it with full fibre, create a technology patchwork quilt to put right all the problems in these deep rural areas.
Fine, okay, and so because Quickline was already a wireless ISP, was that naturally why you went and focused within the rural areas and how you had a natural moving into the gigabit?
Yeah, the ambition in many ways, Johnny, the ambition hasn't changed from what the business was set up by an entrepreneur way back 15 years ago.
Right.
So in those days, you either got a copper voice service or a copper broadband service, but in the deep rural areas, it was very difficult.
Absolutely, yeah.
So he lived in a farm. He created his own wireless network, and his next door neighbour said, "I like that." And he hooked that, and then all of a sudden the village, and then it just grew with 10 meg, 30 meg wireless connections, which was far better than they were getting. Okay. And over time, that business, over a number of years, grew to have 4,000 or 5,000 customers on a wireless, on a legacy 5 gigahertz network on a lightly licensed spectrum, and created a solution. So the ambition of the business then to create a solution to customers in deep rural areas that didn't have broadband is kind of similar to today.
So how long have you been here now then?
I joined in 2021.
Okay, fine.
May 2021.
And in May 2021, had they had their first round of investment yet? Or
Northleaf had just bought the business.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And were beginning to fund it to scale the thing up.
Yes. Yeah. And you came in from day dot then, before
pretty much. There was around about, I can't remember, 35 people when I started. Fine. Yeah. We got well north of 350 now or something like that.
Right, okay, fine. So let's give an overview of Quickline then. So are you just purely rural, wireless and full fibre, or are you building out in metro?
No, it's a great question. No, we are laser we are laser focused around rural,
awesome,
classified premises. So
no overbuild. We
try and avoid overbuild as much as we can. I think around about 96% of our network is either unique or we're one of two.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Usually BT.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very unique network. It's very difficult to build, which I'll come back to. But ultimately, the business is about providing broadband services to those that have been left behind.
What's the customer like? Is it easier for you to connect customers because they're sat in a, or is it, well, I've got two, is it easier because they're sat in a rural area and they've been used to 5 meg and you go, hello, I'm here to help you? Or is it harder because they're sat in a rural area and I like what I've got, I'm used to what I've got. I don't know who you are, I don't know what your brand is. I like BT or I like someone else. That's
a fantastic question. And I think some of that is the same even in urban areas.
It is, yeah.
But yes. So we get people, well, sometimes we're like the knight in shining armour coming across the countryside to put their problems right, and they'll want anything and everything because it's going to be better.
Yeah.
But equally, you're right. People don't recognise the brand. Our brand recognition, unprompted, is around about 8%. It's not too bad. But when you're looking at 93% of the connections in the UK with brand awareness of around about 80, 90%, you're talking about Sky, you're talking about BT, you're talking about Virgin Media, Vodafone, and TalkTalk. The biggest, those sorts of brands you compete in. And customers understandably say, well, I've never heard of you.
Yeah.
Is it going to be like, you're going to be here today and gone tomorrow? Well, am I going to trust my life-saving broadband, the thing I do my work on every day, or I talk to my kids, or I do my banking, or the kids put their homework on, or whatever it might be, public services, with somebody I've never heard of that I might lose tomorrow, or the next week, or next month?
Yeah.
Do you know what? And actually, I don't understand what the benefits are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that I think that all those points that I made right at the end there are the same in urban areas with the other alternative networks because of the brand recognition and the nervousness of customers.
Yeah.
Look at the banking sector, look at the insurance sector, the brands you've never heard of.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
people are always a bit nervous of, aren't they?
So then, so do you physically have to pull the fibre, as in go through go to a farmer and say, unfortunately, I've got to put some fibre under your field, or are you trying to use existing ducting that's to like a village or a town?
Yeah. And I built in urban areas, of course, with Hull, top 10 city. But rural areas are very different. So there's geographical barriers to start with. You're working in forests, in woodlands. You're crossing huge swathes, acres of land, the areas of natural beauty and all the restrictions that brings. We're in places like communities in and around the North Yorkshire Moors, the Peak District, the Yorkshire Wolds, the Lincolnshire Wolds, the Peak. Lots and lots of those sort of things. It's no surprise a few years back when the Tour de France was going to be hosted, the Grand Depart was going to be in the UK. They picked Yorkshire because of all the hills. It's difficult terrain. It's a difficult challenge for cyclists. Imagine what it's like for people building fibre networks. So there's all that. Your point about there's very little network there.
Yeah.
You almost created a network from scratch. If there is some BT network, it's usually directly buried.
Yeah.
If there is some duct, it'll be blocked or smashed. It'll be untouched for decades. So God knows what type of estate it's in. Power isn't out there.
Yeah.
You've got your cabinets or moss sites to connect to.
So what do you do in that scenario? Do you have to go to the farmer and say, "Can I connect to your grid?"
Yeah, and then you've got all the private landlord issues and way leave issues. You have to talk. Now, very frequently they're keen to help.
Yeah.
Because they understand it's the right thing to do and it helps their community, helps their farm or whatever else it might be.
Yeah.
But equally, often they're resistant.
Yeah.
So it's a very different and difficult build. And then you get to it's sparsely populated. So my premises can be in the urban areas. If you can look at meterage between homes as a cost driver, the lower the better. So it could be between 3 metres or 10 metres or 12 metres. We're talking hundreds of
I was about to say that. That's my next question. It's nuts.
Yeah. So that's hard.
Yeah.
So you've got all that to deal with. Where there's complexity, there's extra cost.
Yeah.
And then they don't understand the brand or what you're trying to do. Are you going to be here today, tomorrow? Then digital adoption. What's fibre going to give me? And what is fibre? I've heard I've got fibre. No, you haven't got fibre because of all this nonsense about
fibre rubbish.
Yeah, which you talked about before.
Yeah.
So that's the other part of the equation because in the end, you've still got to get customers onto the network.
And what about recruiting? Do you have to get specialist engineers who are used to working in rural areas? Like I've done interviews with engineers, but they're in cities and they're used to lifting up chambers and rodding and pulling stuff through. Yep. But in a rural, it's completely different, right?
Yeah, there is that, and then there's the just building the network from scratch.
Yeah.
And different techniques to do that with mold ploughing or whatever it might be in the network.
The machine that puts it under the ground and drags it as it goes and lays it.
Yeah, but for
can you not put it overground across?
Yes,
fields?
yeah, we can put. Yeah, and it's a lot cheaper, a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So we try and do that where we can. Yeah. We always try and use some infrastructure if it's in place. But as I say, often you're building networks from scratch. But I say the upside is that we're not overbuilding anybody else, and it's a service that customers need and farmers need and people in rural areas need.
And who's going to ever come and try and overbuild you after all that,
Well, yeah, exactly. So you're looking in the urban areas where the cost to pass a premise might be 150 quid, 250 quid, 350 quid. You can do that to you could 3,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Some are 10,000, 12,000.
Nuts.
Yeah. It's a factor of 10.
Yeah.
because of all the complexity. And that's why you end up with a lot of this being subsidised.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great segue then.
Thought I'd help you, Johnny.
You guys have been absolutely hammering it within this. I've reported on a lot of news, and you're the first person I get to speak to about this because we've not had any specialists within the project gigabit realm. So if you can give, instead of me, I don't know about it, if you can give my audience an overview of exactly what Project Gigabit is and how you guys got involved, that'd be mint.
Yeah.
Hi, it's me, just a quick one. I want to talk about this episode's sponsors, and the first one is CoSoft. CoSoft are a software development house for our industry, for the ISP, broadband, telco space. They're telco experienced people. They understand our jargon, and whether you're going to build a wholesale portal, whether you need integrations into billing platforms from your CRMs, whether you need availability checker built, maybe you need a ticketing system integrated, maybe you need your knowledge hub built. These guys have experience, they've done it, and they understand our industry. Better yet, they're extremely affordable. Instead of going to an agency and getting billed hourly at an extensive rate when they don't understand our industry, they're just the opposite of that. So if you need to, their details will be in the body of the description so you can reach out. That's CoSoft. And the second sponsor is Elevate Wholesale. Elevate have been a long-standing sponsor of Fibrenews, so I'm really happy again that we can talk about them and their brand. Elevate was created after Luminet, Gigabritain and Telcom have rebranded and have created Elevate. Elevate Wholesale have a ground-to-cloud facility where they're providing infrastructure underground, but also wireless Ethernet. So if you're a reseller in a major city and you need to get connectivity in fast, within 5 to 10 days, you can install their wireless Ethernet connection up to 10 gig. Then after your Ethernet connection has been installed, you can keep it as a backup, or of course you can just migrate across to an Ethernet circuit up to 100 gig. They've got their own infrastructure, but they're also a national player. They also do managed Wi-Fi, cybersecurity, SD-WAN, they do it all, and they're rapidly growing. Their details will be in the body of the description. Thank you again to Elevate Wholesale for being a long-standing sponsor.
So picking up on what I said before, so it's very costly to build in these areas. It's uneconomic. How do you make a return at £5,000 a premise cost, or 10,000, or even 2,500, or whatever it might be? What you've got to do is so government subsidise that, and it's a gap funding model. So they've got Project Gigabit is a £5 billion programme. The ultimate ambition is by 2025 to get to 85% of the UK covered with gigabit-capable broadband.
Yeah.
That is actually technology agnostic, but actually is right now is pretty much fibre or cable infrastructure. By 2030, 100% coverage. So that's what that fund is designed to do. And they broke the UK up into lots. They asked all the operators where they're building, where they aren't building, become white areas, and you bid for those white areas. You tell you how much is it going to cost, how much take-up are you going to get, what's the gap that you require, because you can't make a return on £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 a connection, and the government will subsidise that. And that's kind of how it works. I can't remember now. There's around about 30 contracts across the UK.
Okay. And so they look at, one, if you're near the area, two, your experience, I guess, and how much.
There's quite as you'd expect, public procurement is quite difficult. So I think our bids had more words than J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I think our spreadsheets had 2 million calculations in them. They're very complex bids.
So who's used to doing that? How do you find a bid writer within that space?
Yeah. Well,
Project Gigabit was new, right? So
and we worked with some some external.
You have to.
Yeah, to get that, because we're still running a business as well. Yeah.
So are you not nervous at that point if you spent all that time and energy and money?
Yeah.
To know
anybody that's been involved in bids of that sort of size know it can cost you a lot of money to win nothing.
Yeah, that's nuts. Yeah. And then, so are other people going up for the same bid? Do they tell you that?
No, but you kind of work out who you're up against. So in our area, I think City Fibre have won 7 Project Gigabit lots. I think I'm right there. Quickline have won 4 of the big Type B lots. So we're the second biggest BDUK delivery partner in the UK.
So was this your plan from day dot? And were you not double nervous having that as a plan from day dot, because it could not work?
Yeah.
Because you could just not win the bid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly right, Johnny. So we weren't going to change our direction of travel. We're a deep rural player, and to get into the really deep rural areas, they need to be subsidised to make it economic. Therefore, we had to win a bid. Or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever it might be. So I looked at all the lots with the investors and our team, and there were 4 lots in Yorkshire, and there was and one of them had a big chunk of Lincolnshire, most of Lincolnshire as well. So we had a big debate, right, which one, we'll go for the biggest one. I thought, well, if we go for one and we lose one, I'd sooner go for 4 and win 2, and we've got a business to go forward with. As it happens, we bid for 4, we won all 4.
Nuts.
Yeah, which is great, isn't it? Happy with that. Yeah.
What do you think you're doing differently that others weren't?
Well, we it's all about coverage, right? And we kind of know how to build in rural areas. We've got some good fibre experience as well. A lot of them came with me.
Yeah.
So we understand those communities. We understand what they want. There's some come on to social value as well. It's a big part of the bid. What impact are you going to make in those communities? So we've got a very strong social value package as well as part of that bid, and we knew how to get to the highest coverage for the least amount of money to create value for money for the taxpayer, because ultimately it's public subsidy. So that's what we did, and we were very fortunate that we won all 4. So what that means, Jonny, is that with the funded premises, and there's some communities as well with our own commercial lenses, we can kind of pass around about, and with what we've already built, that'll be a footprint of probably 450,000 premises, deep rural areas that are crying out for broadband.
Pretty big number when you're focusing on rural locations.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah, and what that means. So we and on the back of that, so we won the 4 contracts. As I say, it's very capital intensive. It's very costly. So we got £300 million of subsidy through there to access.
How painful is accessing that funding?
It's a great.
How does that process work?
Another good question, because that's key, isn't it? Again, another reason we thought we had a strong chance is we've worked with BDUK and the government previously. So we on the superfast broadband contracts, which was a lower threshold.
Oh.
So it was providing.
There was a business and a consumer model, wasn't there, for FTTC? Wasn't there?
No, it was more. Well, FTTC was part of the solution. Absolutely, yeah. So it's kind of same thing. Lots, but you had to uplift everybody from over 30 megabits per second.
That's it.
And we did that with wireless here, but some of that process was a bit clunky. We didn't get the money as quickly as we thought we should do. That put a pressure on the cash flows.
And the pot's got a bit. It was the same when the lease line won. Like the channel just rinsed the pot within like 2 months when the first voucher scheme came out.
Yes.
Because obviously we never got charged an install.
Yeah.
We're saying to Mr. Customer, we're going to charge you £2,000 up front because you can claim that back, but you don't pay. Blah blah. So the pot just went.
Yeah.
It was carnage. But
And that demand style, that what they call demand side stimulation, you build the network and then you hope the customer will get the customer before you get the cash. This is what they call supply side. So they say you will get the premise, you pass these premises and you will get paid. Yeah,
right.
Doesn't matter if the customer connects. Well, it does to us because we need to make the case be economically viable, but we'll get the subsidy from BDUK.
Is it a fixed amount per property that you put in your original bid, or is it?
Yeah, it is, but then it's always trued up to make sure that the costs that you've spent are match that. Is it less? It will never be more, but if you spent less, then you can't claim more. Because again, it's public subsidy. Yeah. So, but it's a slicker process with BDUK under Project Gigabit than it was in Superfast. Is my honest opinion. And yes, so far we won our first contract back in late February, and we hit the ground running. So you can do. There's all sorts of ways of starting these contracts, but we said we'll just crack on and start building it. Yeah. You can survey it and take work for forever and a day and go back and argue about whether the network is there that you can use, or we can crack on and do it. We thought we'd crack on and do it. The beauty of that one, because we thought it was the right thing to do for the customer, 77 days later we connected our first customer. Yeah, we connected that first customer from 77 days from signing the contract to winning to connecting.
You should put that in the press more.
Yeah, we did mention it a little bit, but probably not enough, Jonny. And that village just outside of York, a village called Escrick, had no mains gas. It's that type of community.
How do you think you've done that? Is it because the engineers were like sitting waiting for you to give them like the go ahead to get motoring, and they've just been itchy for weeks and they just hammered it, or was the community very open for you to get your infrastructure in?
They were very open, but equally we have got network infrastructure in in the rural areas. That's what we do. We've had that historically. We kind of knew the sort. If we were lucky enough to win some of these bids, we were kind of mobilising things in and around so that we could hit the ground running.
Yeah.
We could switch off if we wanted, if we had to, or divert them if we had to. We had what we call pivot areas that we would pivot if we won and then pivot away if we didn't. So that helped us. And then from late February to just very close to the election, actually, in July, we won then second and then third and then the largest, which was just before the election, which was the what they call Lot 23, which is Lincolnshire and East Yorkshire, which is the biggest lot. So that was really exciting. And since then, so we've only been doing this sort of, whatever it is, 6 months, less than that. We've received the sort of subsidy that we'd got in the plan. So we are getting the money out, the BDUK, as expected. So that's been very, very helpful. And working with BDUK has been actually very, very pleasant. It's been a good experience.
So then, once you've won that contract, so this is the hard part, I'm guessing, because you don't know if you're going to win it or not. So you can't go off and hire 50 engineers for this until they say yes. So then you've got the stressful but exciting time to say, right, suddenly we need to scale to go and deliver X amount of properties. And then it's just carnage, is it?
Well, I guess there's two things, First of all, there's that, and that's absolutely, it was part of the bids that you have to say, if you win, how are you going to build this? Who are you going to work with? So we have to name the subcontractors. So in the background, we've been talking to the subcontractors. Can you scale up in this area? Can you scale up in that area? Get all that in place, and they had to commit to that. And obviously the downstream supply chain. So we kind of lined all that up. So that was okay.
Yeah.
But then we also thought, well, if we win all four of these, how do you fund it? £300 million is a lot of money, but it's not enough. So we were also lining up a debt package as well.
Yeah.
So that was which I'll maybe talk about in a short while, as well as the investment that we got from Northleaf. So trying to line up the funding, the entire funding, and make sure that would work.
Yeah.
Because it's a 2 contracts, it's 3-year build, and the other two it's 4-year build. So it's a 4-year build. So we need the funding to do all that. Subsidy alone is not enough.
Yeah.
And we needed to get the resources in place and the supply chain. And that's kind of what we did in the background. You take a little bit of a risk, of course you do.
I bet your investors loved you, didn't they?
Well, we had all sorts of different scenarios, trust me, lots of different scenarios, including winning none, which I didn't like.
It's got to be, now though, to go and get the additional funding or debt funding, it's got to be easier because you're like, well, the subsidies are here. Well,
you go to the bank, and I'm sure the sector, other people in my position across the sector know this. You go to the banks and say, "Here's a business plan," and they'll say, and the market's very difficult to raise money, as you know, and I'll mention in a minute. But with our model, they say, "Here, you're going to win all these contracts." Yeah, we're going to win these contracts. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you come to us when you've won them, rather than ask for the money before you have done? Yeah. And so you ended up in that sort of vicious circle. But we were very privileged to work with what was the UK Investment Bank, and they were very supportive, which is now the National Wealth Fund. And
what is that outfit? I see that popping up. I write about it all the time. What is it? Is it another government funding?
It's a bank fundamentally, or a fund that is there to help UK PLC grow on the back of infrastructure projects, which require significant capital investment and isn't always easy to fund. Yeah. And that could be wind farms, that could be storage terminals, it could be broadband networks. So they were very supportive of what we were trying to do. We're trying to bring people out of broadband poverty in the north of England. Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change people's lives for the better, and make sure these communities don't wither and die. So I think it's a very powerful story. Yeah. And they were very, very supportive. So once we got the contracts, we raised, I think it's the biggest debt raise in the UK, in our sector anyway, this year. So we raised £250 million with...
This year?
Yes, only a couple of months, August, I think it was.
It sounds like I haven't done any, I purposely don't do any research about my guests.
I'm helping you.
It's a natural conversation, but people must be thinking, stop asking these stupid questions, but it's because I don't know.
Well, because funding is, what you do know is nobody can get funding. Correct. Yeah. But, so, that told me two things. One, our business model was very sound and very capable of being delivered. Yeah. Why would you back it otherwise? And two, the people that we got in the business were capable of delivering that, and we've got that third-party support from UK Investment Bank and NatWest. So NatWest came in as well so they're part of the club, if you like, the £250 million club. So we were very pleased with that, not just because it funded the business, but also gave me, the investors, all of us, a lot of energy, because actually this business must be sound. Yeah.
What month was that you got that?
I think it was August. Yeah.
In the summer as well.
Yeah, just after.
Did you have a nice little staff celebration?
Well, not really, because we were too busy building, trying to connect the customers. So we just, it's a good question. We just kind of just moved through it all. But it was, look, it's.
How do you get the answer to that? Is it literally like an email, like all good, or someone ring you up, like we've done it?
Yeah. It was a call.
Was you? Did you?
4 calls. Yeah. And then they follow that. Then we get the contract negotiation to sort it all out. That takes a while. But yeah, when you're down selected, it's great, you know. And for us in particular, because as I said before, Johnny, you know, we could have won none of them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You wouldn't have been talking to me now.
No, exactly. Yeah, this is it. It's a lot of risk.
Yeah,
a lot of risk.
yeah. But again, we were very confident.
Was this your plan, or was this the previous owners?
It was the investors' plan.
Yeah. To go down the BDUK route.
Yeah. Well, subsidy. The way we built the model, or the investor built the model, was they'll put some money in, we'll get some debt finance, and we'll get a big chunk of subsidy. Of course, that's their gift to put the money in. Yeah. In those days, debt wasn't that difficult to get for infrastructure funds, broadband funds, full fibre funds, and the subsidy was kind of, I'm not sure how this is going to work. Yeah. Over to you, Sean. Yeah. You know, it was that type of thing. And then that's kind of how we worked through all that. And we are now, I believe, one of a handful, maybe not even a handful, of full fibre operators that are building network that are fully funded. Yeah. We have got no problems with funding whilst we build for the next 4 years.
That's good.
There's not many alternative networks that can say that.
No. Yeah. And so acquisition won't be on your mind?
Not really, no. Our plan A is to crack on and build 500,000 premises with full fibre. And I haven't even mentioned the 5G that we've got, which we'll come on to, which we kind of blend together, so that we can create a solution to everybody in the rural north. That's kind of what we're doing. Now, if there are some attractive options around accelerating that plan or creating value for the shareholder, of course, you know, we'll talk. But right now, we're very privileged and lucky that we can kind of don't have to be distracted. That plan A is still a very sound one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, so we don't have to say their names, but would there be other brands now that would be in panic mode because they didn't win them full contracts? Are there other companies that go purely, I want to go down the BDUK route, but then now I've lost out? Do you know what I mean? Is there an unhappy story?
I'm sure there are people that have lost the bids that aren't particularly happy. But
has anyone else gone all or nothing into this BDUK?
I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Because ultimately, most operators, the alternative networks, I'm a huge fan of. As you do, all the chief executive investors that have done that have forced BT. Yeah. Because they wouldn't have done it otherwise. Yeah. We've made a difference to the UK, all 100%. Of us, whether we succeed or whether we don't. Yeah. I'm really pleased and proud of everybody that's involved in this sector that's done that. But there are operators, of course, who haven't got the access to the funding now and having to lock down and monetize their asset and trying to get as many people onto their customers as they can. Yeah. And they've got a nice little business there if they get that right. Yeah. And then, you know, it's no secret, we expect, it's a scale game. Yeah. We expect consolidation to happen in some shape or form, at the large end, at the small end. Yeah. And we're just very lucky that we don't need to do that to continue, and we don't need to just lock down and hunker down and make a small business more profitable. We can kind of make a bigger business and hopefully make that more profitable.
Happy days. So next year is going to be very exciting for you.
Yeah.
And you're going to have some. I had Jeremy on last week from NetOmni.
Yeah.
He made a very interesting statement. He said everybody focuses and is obsesses that your conversion rate or your penetration rate, you know, like 30% is amazing, 40% is unheard of. But he's saying the big brands, they sit around 20, 25%. Yep. So if a network gets to 20%, we should actually be celebrating that. Yeah. And we don't do that enough. But my question was going to be, you should, going down this route, you would assume your penetration rate is going to end up being at the higher end.
Yeah.
But you don't know yet, right?
No, you don't. Look, a number of operators, Jeremy runs a very, very good business. And his model's slightly different to ours. He's building in urban areas at a very low cost to build,
mental rate.
at a very, very amazing rate. You know, he's doing an amazing job there, and that team. And they are knocking out premises in their tens of thousands and connecting now in tens of thousands, as he will tell you. But the cost to POS is very cheap. The operating cost model is cheap, and therefore they don't need as much penetration rate. That's how it works, right? Ours is a little bit, but they are competing with others, so they don't need as much penetration rate, but they struggle to get high rates anyway because there's. So you're right. We should be celebrating 15, 20, 25, 30% whenever that happens, and all the alternative networks I believe can get to that.
Yeah.
Our model's slightly different. It's much more costly. Got a lot more subsidy. But we are relatively unique. You're either unique or you're not, right? But it could be a monopoly or a duopoly, if you like. If you want that, as a infrastructure provider, depending on what retail services you put on top of it. So you would expect our infrastructure to be more heavily penetrated because there's less infrastructure competition in these areas, and there's less infrastructure competition in those areas because it's costly.
Yeah. Are you prepared for when these areas are built that it might be harder than you think? Like, are your marketing team now like, we've got to go hard, like we've got to think how we're going to do it? Because can you get a door knocker out to go and knock just 10 houses in a village?
All those retail challenges that you just mentioned there are very real.
Yeah,
you're right. It's much easier to go into a city and give somebody 1,000 doors to knock than 10 there and 20 there.
The door knocker won't want to do it. He doesn't want to drive 20 miles to hopefully go and earn 5 doors.
Yeah. But equally there'll be more chance because these people do need it, so their conversion rates will be a lot higher.
Very true.
But you're right. So and then the brand awareness, as we talked before, and the awareness of what fibre does, and the digital adoption.
Correct.
Slightly different demographics in the rural areas as well.
100%.
You know, they're a little bit more elderly.
Yeah.
Actually, increasingly, there's more young people in those areas. And COVID drove that. A lot of people sort of moving out of the towns and into the cities because they can work from. But they do that because they can work from home, and they can only work from home on a fibre connection or a 5G network. So it's kind of, again, it's a virtuous circle. So yes, we have to work slightly differently in the retail market than you would in the urban areas, but there's probably more desire for the product.
I think probably in the rural areas, is it less tech heavy, i.e. like putting a leaflet on the window of the fish and chip shop would do you better than it would a PPC campaign? Do you know what I mean? Like you have to backtrack a bit, and you have to do more with the community, I can imagine.
Correct, we talk about being hyper-local.
Hyper-local.
Not just our marketing, our go-to-market strategy is much more about hyper-local. Can we do things in communities? These communities, I don't know, we were talking about in Exeter, right, and the lovely parts of the world where you live. It's no different than any other part of the UK in the countryside. They are often in these villages. There's a broadband champion, somebody that's sort of right. I'll put my little forum together on Facebook. 100%. I'll talk to the parish council. I'll talk to the local authority. When can I have full fibre?
Accurate.
And they do the selling for you. If you can get hold of those people, that's kind of that community model. That's the perfect solution. So what we do as well as part of the gigabit contracts that I referred to earlier, and we do not just because it was part of the gigabit contracts, is do an awful lot in what we call social value. So we've got a program here in Quickline called Q Futures, and the way I remember it, because I'm a simple man, it's 3 E's. We talk about enriching livelihoods, we talk about educating people, and we talk about enhancing the environment. Under those 3 pillars, we work with partners. So when we talk about educating people, we do a lot of digital literacy training, we do a lot of online safety training, we do a lot of work with the schools and the colleges on STEM, bringing girls and women into digital employment, enriching livelihoods. We do an awful lot of community foundation grants. We work with the parish halls. We connect their village hall up. We will do an awful lot around trying to create jobs with people like the Prince's Trust, which is now the King's Trust. And in the environment, we'll work with the Northern Forest or carbon literacy programs or anything around what we can do to educate people around the environment and what we can do. And all that is because we've got people that live in the north of England, that work in the north of England, that are even our customers. So I feel we've got a moral right to do good in these areas. And I talk about 8 little words in this business. It's connecting rural communities to a world of possibilities.
That's not the first time you said that.
That's what we've said that before. And I say it all the time. That's our flag on the hill. And although some of the stuff I talked about on the 3 E's might sound quite benevolent, it's a halo impact on the brand. And if they trust that we want to do the right things in their areas and create jobs and wealth in those areas, guess what? They might take our broadband as well.
Nice. Smart.
Yeah.
So, you've got a completely different strategy to the chap I had in last week who, as he said it, brute force sales. More heads, it works. But, you've got to come up with a completely unique strategy.
So that's hyper-local. That's why we're in the communities. It's hyper-local stuff. And although our brand unprompted awareness is 8%, that's not too bad, actually, for pretty much a start-up. But that's because we're based in the north of England. We try and do stuff in the north of England in our little communities, and we kind of work with those guys.
Your vans are probably more important than any other normal metro networks, because you see 20 branded vans on one road in a city.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're knocking about in a cabinet or on a bit of land in their village, they'll be like, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
So even your branding on your vans has to be important.
It is, yeah. And the stuff we do, the vans is really important. Any operator will tell you when you're building, you're creating a fuss. Make sure the brands are rated.
Do you have to brief your... this might be a question for the ISPs and networks in general who are building out. Do you have to brief your engineers, like, people might get angry at you, but please be nice to them because we're going to want to connect them? Is that something you have to physically say to engineers, or they just know it? Do they have to go for a training?
We train all the engineers, and make sure they're respectful. Absolutely. And ultimately, they could be customers of ours. But even if they're not, you still got to be respectful.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so making sure that they put obviously there's all this health and safety stuff, but making sure that they they've told them when they're going to park the vehicles, where the network's going to go, so they can get out the drive, or the dust or the muck on people's cars, and we make sure that there's all sorts of that.
If they're coming from, like, let's say, like an open reach site, they're going to have very different. Not all of them, 100% not, but they're going to have a different attitude. Like, they need to be briefed, right? Because open reach, they're always forever winning and will always win. But you guys, anyway, I'll go off a tangent. The 5G stuff.
Yes.
So one of my questions were going to be: are you just full fibre? Or do you offer any additional products like landline or TV or mobile? Some people are going into. But then you touched on earlier there, you have a 5G product.
We have a 5G fixed wireless product. So it's not a 5G mobile mobility product.
I see what you're saying.
So this business was what they called a WISP, wireless internet service provider. And so we've got 400 masts or whatever it is on the old network, 500 masts. And when I say a mast, it could be a 30-metre lattice pole, or it could be a pole, a 10-metre pole, or it could be a 5-metre pole in somebody's garden. That's how it was built to get in those days. When we built our new tech wireless network as a result of the superfast broadband contracts, we've got around about 150 masts that have got 5G technology on it. 5G fixed wireless, it's the first in the UK. It can provide, the physics says it can do a gigabit. Right now we're offering 100 and 200 megabit service, and we're just trialing a 400. So that, and it's a wireless service. So you have a dish on your house, and it goes back to the mast site. And that range could be anywhere between 10 and 20 kilometres.
That's it. And then the further away it is, the more the bandwidth drops off.
Sometimes, but not the physics. We've got customers connect rock solid on 18, 20 kilometres now. Line of sight's always an issue. Oh, that's clever. That's getting clever in these days. But our vision is always customers don't really care. As long as they're getting a rock solid, reliable, and very speedy internet connection, they don't really care. There's a play-off. Do you want your drive dug up, or do you want a dish on your house? So some people like drive dug up, and some people like I don't want it. So there's an option. So what our vision was always: can we connect every single customer up? Not just we can only get to 80% of that village. Wouldn't it be great if we can kind of connect every single?
So you get the full fibre into the village, and then if you could put a mast up and then connect to that final 20% at too far away via wireless if you need to.
We've done that. That's kind of the model at 40,000 feet. Yeah, you've got to get power to the mast. So that's kind of always a challenge. But we've and you backhaul it out. So we've got masts that are connected with the fibre backhauled into our core network, and we've got access network with full fibre as well. So we kind of got a blend. And that technology will only get better and better. So I said right at the outset on Project Gigabit, 2030, 100% people connected with gigabit capable technology. I can tell you now, and I don't think you'll have anybody that would disagree with this that you've interviewed, that won't be done with full fibre.
No.
Yeah, it's just too expensive, too difficult. There will be a couple of percent,
Yeah.
and that means hundreds of thousands of people,
Yeah.
500,000 people, 1 million, whatever it is, that will never get full fibre. So how do you solve that problem? It's either fixed wireless or satellite. I think satellite will play a part at the very edge fringes, but the vast majority of that will be some sort of fixed wireless access technology, and that technology is getting better and better. So we've still got a foot in both camps, if that makes sense.
Because you're a rural broadband provider, you might know the answer to this. So I always thought, like, Elon Musk is smashing out this Starlink at such insane rates, and the more he's increasing the capacity constantly. Yep. Is it ever a worry to ISPs or investors, like, we've just dumped $250 million into this company? What happens if Elon suddenly takes off? Yeah. Is that ever a worry to people, or it's just not the right product?
I don't think it's a worry. I think we obviously keep an eye on it all, but I just don't think it will ever get there in the
it's never going to have the same
time that they require. So I think. Look, I could also say I'm not sure. I think he's going to be fairly distracted for the next 6 years, don't you? Which is another whole different podcast. But I genuinely mean that. I think he will be distracted, and that business will be. But I think that the latency, the technology itself, the cost to deliver satellites, and is going to be quite prohibitive, certainly in the next generation. I'm not saying in 20, 30, 40 years' time things might happen. It's certainly absolutely brilliant for the likes of Africa or parts of Australia where it really is properly sparse, and there are fringe cases in the UK, but I don't think that will challenge the business models that the alternative networks and even the larger established networks will have.
So what's the plan now for the future? Is it just purely concentrate on the contracts you've got and let's deliver this, or are you going to write any more bids? Are they all taken in the BDUK?
They're all taken. Whether they get completed or not is down to the networks themselves.
That's a very good point. So what happens if a network didn't win? I don't know.
Well, I think there's two things to answer, Johnny. I suspect most of those networks will get built into those gigabit contracts. But as we said right at the outset, there's some funding challenges and some other operators, and who knows what's going to happen. I'm very happy to say to BDUK, we're very happy to pick up anything else if that comes out. What's more interesting for us all who've got gigabit contracts is the way this works. As I said right at the outset, operators are asked where they're going to build, they tell you where they're going to build, and then those white areas that are left, the public subsidy goes into. However, often operators say they're going to build in lots of areas and they don't, and that gets reviewed 3 times a year. So, and increasingly, as I said at the outset as well, operators are stopping building. Yeah. So when they've said they're going to go to that community, then the next quarter or the next open market review, they say they haven't. That then becomes white. So BDUK will constantly get, I suspect, extra premises to connect. Yeah. So that's the first thing, and that there'll be in our patch that could be tens of thousands. Could even double the contract. Who knows? Yeah. So, and we've already won those contracts, so they can be recycled into the contracts through change request. Happy days. So that means the footprint could be bigger. Yeah. So that's that. But also, we've still got to solve that problem. Even when we bid, we didn't bid 100% of those premises in those contracts. Yeah. Because there's still some white premises that just didn't make economic sense, even with the subsidies that was on offer. Yeah. So how do you solve that problem? I talk about fixed wireless. That's going to have to be picked up somehow. Yeah. So again, we're talking to government about different technology solutions that can answer that, or different subsidy models that might help support that. So,
and is it attractive to them because the 5G stuff is surely more economical, isn't it, to deliver then?
Yeah, it should be. Absolutely, yeah, it should be. And so that's kind of encouraging for everybody, and they're increasingly open to that.
Do you have to be as aggressive as other networks when it comes to getting the customer connected? I.e., have 12 months off and a free router and a free install and a 5-star holiday to Mallorca. Do you know what I mean?
That's always. Again, I think this. I'm sure around every board table, every alternative network on this operate, this challenge, where you're saying, why are we giving this thing away? There's a more holistic question. You go to the States and you're paying $100 a month for broadband.
For fibre.
Yeah. And yeah, you can, or $80, whatever it might be. Then you come to the UK and they're paying 20 quid.
Yeah.
You know, but so this market, it has been a bit of a race to the bottom, and you mentioned discounts and this, that, and the other, and everyone's ARPUs are slightly lower than where they need to be. So that is a challenge for all operators. It's difficult to say, right, no, I'm going to pitch my products at 40 quid or 50 quid or 60 quid, and everybody else is at discounted at half price or whatever. And the customers understandably saying, well, hold on, why are you so expensive? And that because it's national advertising and this, that, and the other. So that is a challenge for us all. I think eventually that will firm up, and I think that will find a level. I do have and I've mentioned this to the new Labour administration. One thing that you're probably not aware of, not many people are, VAT on broadband is 20%. Yeah. On other utilities, it's 5%. So actually, shouldn't that be equalised? This is now the fifth utility. Yeah. Shouldn't customers be getting 15% less on VAT? Now, it's not going to land on, and it didn't, on too sympathetic ears, because the Treasury's got its own challenges, hasn't it, right now?
So you put that forward?
I've mentioned that, yeah.
How?
Absolutely.
What, in like a letter?
No, we had a sort of a round table thing, and I raised it. Yeah. Yeah, just before the election, and it got short thrift. And I said, well, can we consider this in the Treasury in the review? But when you step back, why not? You know, if gas, electricity, water, if they're life critical utilities. Isn't broadband? You know, how do you access your GP?
The switch off, it will be, right? Because of
how do you get
fire alarms and everything else. They're all going to run over the connectivity.
Yeah, it's infrastructure that is required to live your life. So shouldn't that be a level VAT threshold? That would help, I think. That would either support the low cost that we've got today. Yeah. Because ultimately the price is going to have to go up, but it would mean that the prices don't go up too much, or it will make sure that the operators, the network operators, get a return quicker, and therefore there's much more agility around what we can do as businesses. Yeah. So I think, so you look at the market generally, I think ARPU should be higher. Yeah. There's a lot of discounting going on, and it's difficult when one person does it to avoid that. We're a little bit more fortunate because we've got markets where it's, people think 40, 50 quid is good value. Yeah. Because they need it to live their lives, but when there's not an awful lot of options for them. No.
Okay, so we've hit the hour mark.
Have we really?
Yeah,
God, it flies by, doesn't it?
Absolutely rapid. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to talk about? At the hour mark.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think you've probably covered it all.
You've got an exciting year to come.
Yeah.
No, exciting years to come. It seems like you've been in the nerve-wracking arena for the last 24 months, and now now it's all. Well, not all positive, because you're going to have some stress. There's no doubt about that. But you must be buzzing. Right?
Buzzing, yeah. I can say. I'd say for the future, I can kind of see two things. You mentioned consolidation. I think there'll be 2 or 3 large players in the UK. Yeah. But it's a big debate whether Jeremy might say whether it's going to be him and then it's Omnia Business or City Fibre or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, which is great fun. It's definitely going to be Open Reach. It'll be Virgin Media and Next Fibre. Duopoly and maybe one of the other guys. I think there's space for rural providers. They're just different economics.
Correct. Richard Tang said the exact same thing.
Yeah, they're different economics, as I said before. Yeah. So let everybody fight over the 85% of the UK, and then let the likes of the Go Fibres, the Quicklines, the Wildernets, the GigaClears, and those businesses in themselves can be nice businesses. They might come together. You know, those types of businesses, the Fibreses as well, and those types of things. Yeah. There's a number of us. Yeah. So I think that's going to be quite exciting. Yeah.
I think that's true as well, because the larger brute forcing type networks that are out there that I speak to, and we have this consolidation conversation with, they're never interested in the rural place. And then offline, I'll have conversations with them. I don't know why they talk about it. And I'll say, why did you never go down the BDUK route? Stuff like that, the rural. It's too much hard work. It's too complicated. We know what we're doing. We've done it before. Yeah. Hard sales, people on doors, get it done. So
they
might not be of interest to them. So
and they're two different business models. So I think there'll be 2 different types of networks in the UK. It's not just similar to what it's like in Germany. And then the other interesting bit, of course, in the future is we're all, I won't say we're all one-trick ponies, but we are pretty much selling broadband services in our retail arms. And you mentioned voice. We sell that, and others sell that, and that's an important product as well. And then maybe TV. But it's what other services you can let on. And then there's Wi-Fi everywhere type products in the home, which is clearly important, and all that type of thing. And then what other services can you layer on top of that? And that's, I think, where you'll see some growth as well for the investors, for our businesses. And that could, and in the B2B space, which you know very well, Jonny, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And particularly with our wireless technology, I was saying this the other day, think about the farms and agri-tech and how you get your fertilisation right and all the rest of it. Think about, has to be wireless. You don't have fibre to your tractor. Think about driverless cars. Yeah, that needs some sort of. Think about the power stations, the renewable farms. That's all wireless. You can't get fibre to.
Do you do any IoT if you're in rural spots?
Yeah. But the beauty about 5G technology is that we have is IoT is low bit rate stuff.
Yeah.
So you kind of what they call network slicing. So you can kind of just allocate a portion for that low bit rate stuff. You can kind of allocate another portion for something a bit sexier, and then something even more sexy or much more data hungry. And you can kind of then start using the same connection for different types of services. So that the business opportunity on wireless, and I think in the fibre world. So we've got some lovely case studies when we've gone and connected up Stump Cross Caverns, which is a beautiful attraction, which is in the middle of nowhere because it's a cavern and it's caves and it's stalagmites and stalactites, but they can't access anything they want to. So we've connected that place up. So they've got interactive services now. The kids can go on their network. They can follow their. We've got the Enchanted Forest in North Yorkshire, similar sort of thing where those experiences can be held, because that's how people work. Let alone having you pay your admission fee on a CRM on a wireless. Yeah, that needs connection. Yeah. So we've got lots of lovely little case studies like that, and again in our patch, think the farms, and again this will be right across the UK. A farm isn't just a farm these days. No. You can't make money. No. So we've got farms here that are sort of diversified into being a brewery.
Yeah, or glamping, or cafes.
Or glamping, or cafes, or wood burning options, and this, that, and the other. Again, to sell their services, they need a CRM, and to have a CRM, they need connectivity. Yeah. So there's all that type of stuff. So I think there's all those different services, ancillary services, and then there's also this. What's going to happen? Yeah. We'll consolidate into some large operators and some rural players, and that's how I see the market.
Are you ever going to go wholesale? I've asked this to every single one of my guests.
Yeah. Well, we've got an obligation. When you receive public subsidy, you have to have open access. Options. So we have to provide a wholesale service. So yes, we do. The problem is, and I'm sure the other participants, I think I heard Rich say as well, you need scale.
Yeah, you do.
You need scale for the Zens of this world, let alone the Vodafones and the Skies and all the challenges they've got. But you need scale, even with 500,000 premises, even when we're relatively unique. Is that are we top of the pile for people to come and interconnect with us and have take our wholesale service? No, we're not. We will be, I'm sure. Yeah. Because ultimately we want to give choice to the customer.
Right.
And they'll want choice.
Yeah. So eventually will Quickline Direct branch off or be got rid of, and then you just stay as Quickline Wholesale, say? Isn't that the easier life?
We've organised our business to be able to disaggregate and understand the components and the cost of the wholesale business and likewise of the retail business. So we're organised to do that. Yeah. But Jonny, I'm not sure right now anyone's clamouring to come and take wholesale services from us.
Of course, so you need that direct brand to go and actually penetrate the network.
Yeah, so we need to do that exactly with our own retail arm. So that's kind of what we do, and we'll go through all the big operators first, and then the smaller operators, and then eventually, I'm sure we'll have.
It takes the same amount of work to integrate into a big operator as it does to a small. So get the big ones done first, and hopefully use some sort of middle aggregator to serve the rest.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Business and the consumer.
Yeah. That's an area you're pretty comfortable with that, if I'm not mistaken, Jonny.
That's my bread and butter. Right, that's perfect. John, perfect. Thank you very much. This was a really good conversation, and thank you very much. Obviously, to our audience, you notice we're not in the Fibrenews studio, so we've travelled up to Hull.
We're just outside Hull in East Yorkshire, in our lovely offices, which are very similar. It's a converted barn.
It's mint, as well.
It's nice, isn't it? Yeah.
Did you guys do it?
No, we didn't do the fit out, but it was. But it's lovely, and I kind of say when I'm here, it's because it's like. This is the sort of premise that we connect. You feel like you're in the rural Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, don't you?
I'm looking out the window at the rolling hills, and it is very beautiful. So, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm delighted. Thank you.